Good evening and welcome to the show, and if any internet users are considering accessing the Have I Got News For You website, you should get out more. In the news this week, in Central Africa, the Hutu militia say they have now sufficient arms supplies, but are still short of the odd uniform. In Manchester, pop historians tracked down the house where Liam and Noel Gallagher grew up. And there are fears that the clampdown on alcoholism in the Russian Navy may not have been 100% successful. On Ian Hislop's team, a writer and comedian who will shortly be disappearing from our screens as he's going to present a daily chat show on Channel 5, Jack Docherty. And with Paul Merton tonight, a Labour MP who once criticised the government for turning over the ether to Rupert Murdoch and his Cheap Jack operation. That was shortly before starting his twice-weekly show on Sky Television, Austin Mitchell. To start at the very beginning would seem slightly pointless, so let's instead carry on with round one. That is our film round, Ian and Jack.
It's a big church. Just regular people with an ordinary hobby.
I think it's David Mellor, who came out as a great supporter of banning handguns, which I think is very selfless, given he works for most of the major arms manufacturers in the country. Rather cutting off his market, I would have thought. There was a vote, and it was going to be a free vote, on which MPs voted according to their consciences, but then that would have proved very difficult for some of them. So the government had a three-line whip and passed the bill. I can't remember which way Austin voted.
I abstained. I was in favour of dismantling, particularly with David Mellor.
It was a free vote for you guys.
It was a free vote for us, yes,
Yeah.
just that everybody voted the same way. It was very useful for my position, actually. There was I saying we shouldn't ban guns, we should just dismantle them. And last week, the very time I'm making the speech, and there it is on the front page of the Grimsby Evening Telegraph, there's another item on the front page of the Grimsby Evening Telegraph saying, large arms cache found in Grimsby. And
so where are we going to be if the fish start arming themselves?
I think they'll have to with all these Spanish fishing boats.
Yeah, dolphins will only take so much before they turn on you.
It could happen.
Have you ever seen a haddock with a howitzer?
Yes, it is the firearms bill, the Conservatives' latest bid to lose votes. Opponents of the bill reacted angrily to any further gun control, saying that pistol shooting will be destroyed as a sport, leaving thousands of enthusiasts with no alternative but to get a life.
You've got to be very careful about being rude about people who shoot for a hobby, because they might shoot you.
Paul and Austin, catch this one.
Well, that's the lorry rotisserie on the kind of like a toast rack. They put the lorries.
Well, this is the madness of having lorries delivering fire to the continent.
That's the 10th president.
Just because there's people in Calais have had the electricity cut off, and they're delivering fire and they hand it out. I mean, anyone could see that happening. Why in this country are we still delivering fire to the continent? It's sheer madness.
It is. Well, your answer is sheer madness, because it was in fact polystyrene that was on fire, not fire, obviously. I can see where you're
When the fire's not on fire, where is the fire?
Were you aware of the safety mechanism which failed? There were two.
I'd learnt it, funnily enough, by heart the night before.
It was that... And the mechanism was the basic one of people seeing that a lorry was on fire before it entered the tunnel and not saying anything. Oh, look, that lorry's on fire. Oh, there it goes, bye.
I have to say, you're too critical. Nothing actually failed, apart from the decoupling mechanism, the smoke dispersal mechanism, the escape mechanism, and the instructions to the driver to go on to the other side as fast as he could and get the hell out of there.
It was all excellent, yes.
The minibar was still working very well.
They have come up with a future policy to avoid it, or avoid such accidents in the future.
Not to have a fire.
Stop delivering fire. It's wrong. It's just sheer madness. It's an accident waiting to happen.
They argued about those lattice lorries a couple of years ago. And the argument was that if you cover them in, there's more pressure on the wheels, so you get less vehicles going through, and if you get less vehicles going through, then they don't pay so much to go through. So the argument was, should we have less vehicles going through, or should we have more money? And guess which one? Amazing but true.
It is incredible.
Like your hair.
And,
I think...
yes, you can have your points. Anyway, it's the fire that swept through...
His constituency agent. Like, he's great, I'd vote for him again, wouldn't you?
It is the fire that swept through a Channel
It's sheer
Tunnel shuttle.
madness.
It is. Name of the French Transport Minister for a cheap... Bernard Ponce.
What, in French, what is ponce? What does it mean?
It means
It could be
raging
twat.
homosexual. As soon as the fire was reported, the usual emergency procedures kicked in, with hordes of graphic artists rushing to the scene. The Times diagram explained to its readers how the intricate series of tunnels interlinked, whilst the Sun's diagram explained to its readers which two countries the Anglo-French tunnel. Ian and Jack.
It's the British Broadcasting Corporation, a fine institution.
That's a clue.
Yeah, this is Bob's big joke book. Was nicked, and a guy tried to sell it back to him, and I think he missed a huge trick, because I mean, imagine how much he would have got if he'd promised never to give it back. Yeah, and so there was a sting, and
But what did the books contain? There was more than just jokes, of course.
There were quips, gags, woofers,
joshes,
tweakers.
sideways irreverent glances at the week's news, and a dirty limerick about a man called Bernard Ponce.
And where are these books now?
They're in the Criminal Museum. I've no idea where they are.
Yeah.
I expect they're in Bob's house.
Bob's house?
Or in his office, maybe.
Police are still holding on to them for the moment, aren't they?
Yeah,
We're going through them for the Christmas party.
yes, I think...
Police are looking into them.
Thank you. You can...
That's in there, that one.
I'm sure we can look forward to an audience with Detective Sergeant Wilkins on LWC.
Have you ever noticed, when you're in the post office, the queue that you are queuing up in is the one that moves slower? It's the way I tell them.
And how did he celebrate? Does anyone remember?
He got slaughtered and went out for a night with a prostitute.
Well, I've actually got that he bought a Jaguar XK8, but I'm sure...
Well, you've got to impress them somehow.
Bob admitted, some good has come out of this. I've had to write a lot of new material. Rather depends on how you define good. And finally, Paul and Austin.
Privatised London bus services. Crowd control, hootses or tootses? A list of the supply of arms to either the hootses or the tootses.
I think they're
There's something
Hutus
called
and Tutsis, but then, I don't know, you're the MP.
Whichever one was responsible for the genocide last year was armed by a British arms firm, it is alleged. And Ferry Bridge is where the arms corps, which is called Transco or something...
Miltech, yes.
Miltech.
Yes.
Ferrybridge is in the Isle of Man, and Miltech is based in the Isle of Man, but its company secretary, for some reason, lives on the island of Sark, so it must have been somewhat inconvenient doing the accounts.
But
What's it like to have a real comedian on the show?
Would you like someone to sit with you?
Austin's just made me want to be an MP. If it's that much fun.
I never realised Channel Islands were so amusing, but there we are. Yes.
But it's the basic British policy, is that if we're about to send in British troops, it's pretty important that the people who are going to shoot at them use British weapons.
And there has been also a trade recession in the arms business, which is due to...
Peace, probably.
Yes.
Which is always a bit of a bummer in that business, isn't it? But haven't we just sold a vast amount of arms to Qatar?
Yeah, well, we are rather dependent now on these little civil wars to keep the arms trade going now that the Cold War has ended.
Yeah, but I mean, what Britain does is it sells the weapons to Saudi or whatever, and then Saudi feels threatened, and they say, can the British Army come in and defend us with their weapons? If we don't want to use ours, they might get dirty.
Yep, we're now second, apparently, in the chart, in the arms dealing chart. In at number 2 with a bullet. To the cerebral delights of round 2, set as it is in the lofty domain of tabloid journalism, 2 weighty headlines of national gravitas, Ian and Jack. Jungle jab drove me wild.
I think this is Fergie, who blamed, she got into jungle music, and blamed those rock and roll rhythms for running up a 3 million overdraft and shagging everyone in sight.
She did have a jab in the jungle.
One of the most unpleasant places to have a jab.
She says this is responsible for all her subsequent behaviour.
Yeah.
She said this on the Ruby Wax show. Yeah. Another good PR move by the Duchess. I won't look an idiot, will I? Oh, no.
It's true, isn't it? She had this thing and when she was about 17 or something, and the side effects of it was she became a compulsive skier. Most of it against her will.
You saw the show then?
Yeah, I watched it Sunday. I loved the bit about when she claimed to be her Royal Highness still, and got quite sort of shirty. It said Her Royal Highness Duchess of York, actually. Sorry about that. She was driving along, and it was all rubbish.
Ruby said to her, I thought that had been taken away from you, and she said, no, it hasn't been taken, I choose not to use it. And then it turned out that her choice not to use it is on the grounds that she's not allowed to.
Do you remember any aspects of the interior of her home, such as her bedroom, for example?
Lots of pictures of the Queen.
Yes, one picture of the Queen, certainly. Yeah. Post-its on the drawers was the thing.
Oh, yes, that's right. White T-shirts, blue T-shirts, green T-shirts, red T-shirts.
This is the door.
Yeah.
You live here. Sleep in big comfy thing.
Fergie believes that after the injection, chemical toxins went straight to her brain and stayed there. The medical reason being that nature abhors a vacuum. In the autobiography she was plugging on the show, Fergie used a variety of nursery rhyme images and compared herself to a Humpty Dumpty figure. I had to put myself back together when all the king's horses and all the king's men had already written the job off. The only difference being, of course, that Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, not a Texan. Paul and Austin, that age-old problem, anyone seen our rocket?
Oh, yes, this was the entirely successful venture by the Russians to send a rocket up into outer space to take photographs of the bottom of the Pacific Ocean.
Well, it was going to Mars.
Yeah, oh, was it going to Mars?
Just missed. It was carrying news of the success of Boris Yeltsin's heart bypass operation. And it was going to descend, first of all, on Australia, wasn't it? It got off course, and they mobilised the entire graduate community of Australia, both of them, to track it down. And they found it was going to land in the Pacific, towards Chile.
Yes. And who was it that gave the Australians the warning?
Ah.
Yeah.
Was it Bugs Bunny?
It's a good guess. Clinton is, in fact, the answer. But I can see where you thought Bugs Bunny from.
Well, they're both American.
Yes, obviously. And both have teeth.
It didn't get out of its first orbit.
No.
It had to have a booster, and the booster didn't work.
And there was a latch attached from the rocket to the landing stage, which, I mean, it was like the tunnel. Someone actually saw on the ground and said, look, that latch is going to pull it off.
They blamed it on having a shoestring budget, because the rocket only cost 39 million, and that they had to meet a launch window.
Yeah, but you can chuck a rocket into the sea any day of the week.
Obviously,
It's a sad story.
Yes, but we find it amusing. This is the story of the Russian rocket that caused panic this week when it failed to break out of Earth's orbit and looked as if it was heading for the Australian desert, causing the government there to move hundreds of Aborigines into the area. Despite the various problems, this was still an historic venture. In fact, it was the first attempted Mars probe since Mick Jagger split up with Marianne Faithfull. Which
I bet that's in Bob's book as well.
Which galactic waste means the end of this intermediate stage, and the situation is that, well, both teams are boldly going nowhere in particular, given that they're exactly level on 6. 4 strange faces, one of which stands out as being odder than the rest. A description not only of our panel tonight, but of our odd one out round. Paul, your men who would be king are Sean Connery, Prince Edward, Eric Cantona, and Cameron McIntosh.
Well, a rather unfortunate pose for Prince Edward.
It's not particularly great for Sean.
Oh, one
Prince
day.
Edward the only one feeding an invisible panda? Sean Connery recently put some money into a play in the West End. Has that got anything to do with it?
Might do.
Well, Cameron McIntosh has clearly done that, 'cause he's the big producer. Prince Edward probably must have done, and so...
Well, he had his own production company.
Yeah, he did, didn't he? Eric Cantona is the odd one out because he's the only one who can do that with his thumbs. And he can't wait to get hold of Sean Connery.
Can we say no, it isn't now?
Yes, you
Cantona
can.
has put money into a play, and Edward has only put money into television shows.
And you're wanting a point for that?
No, 2.
Well, I guess you can have it because it's the right answer.
Thank you.
Yes. Well done.
I didn't know that.
Apparently Prince Edward always harboured the ambition to be a television producer and took the only route he knew to get there. He said, "Mummy, I want to be a television producer." Eric Cantona has set up his own theatre company and has just produced a new version of the Edward Albee play, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. In a reciprocal deal, Sir Peter Hall will be making his debut for Man United in the Coca-Cola Cup. Austin, your 4 good men and true are Richard Gere, Peter Lilly, Prince Andrew, and Liberace.
Hadn't all of these been accused of being homosexuals but defended by people who proved they were not homosexuals? Fergie was defending Prince Andrew as certainly not homosexual.
Yes.
My memory is that the only one who's actually sued is Liberace.
Is Liberace the only one who messed it up by getting his boyfriend to say that he wasn't gay?
Well,
Whereas all the others got either the girlfriend or the wife, where he got his...
well, in that case, he's the only one whose wife didn't say it was normal.
She was in Hello, Gail Lilly, saying, my husband is not gay.
That's right. So he's the
Actually,
Liberace.
that's not quite how she put it. She
Liberace
She said,
is the
it's
only
very
one.
funny, the idea that my husband should be gay. And everyone else said, yes, it is very amusing.
She actually said there's nobody less remotely gay,
Fair enough.
which I think means raving homosexual. No. The answer is that they've all been publicly pronounced not gay, with the exception of Richard Gere, who refuses to be drawn. Richard Gere said in a recent interview, "It doesn't matter if you're straight or gay, but if you start to take a defensive mode and say, 'No, I'm not,' it gives credence to the idea that there's something wrong with it, and there's nothing wrong with it." So definitely a puff then. Jack, your 4 male pin-ups are Bernard Levin, Roger Cook, Alan Starkey, and Frank Bruno.
It's hitting. I think it's going to be something to do with hitting. That Bernard Levin, years ago when he lived in black and white, was thumped by that bloke on that programme. And Frank Bruno gets hit for a living, as does Roger Cook, frankly. Gets hit for a living, and Alan Starkey hasn't been hit yet by anyone, but is probably on the verge of so being.
Didn't he reveal that Fergie was hit by Johnny Bryan?
Quite possibly. You're reading the book, aren't you?
Yes, he does. It is in that book.
Does
yeah.
mention that.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Well, that makes him the slapper rather than her.
There
Wait a
was,
minute, Alan Stark is the only one who has to have his name attached to his head, so that he knows. Okay.
I didn't see it, but wasn't he on the Jonathan Ross show the other week? And there was a big sort of bit of a set to, bit of an argument. I didn't see it though, but I
no,
think
it
that's what
was,
happened.
it was after the show finished, in fact, yeah.
Oh, right.
He challenged Jonathan Ross to a fight.
Oh, that's right.
There is actually a mistake in one of these photographs. Can you spot the mistake?
Alan Starkey's name isn't spelled right.
Oh, yes, very good indeed. Well done.
Well, it was
why-
either that or Bernard Levin's got the wrong glasses on. And that's very difficult to tell from the picture,
Yes. Why is it misspelt?
because some of the letters are wrong.
Yes, a perfect answer. Bernard Levin was punched in the face by a member of the audience during his live appearance on That Was the Week That Was.
Mr. Levin, before you begin, it will take a minute. Would you stand up a second? Mr. Levin, your review of chemistry and the like was not a review.
Please,
it was a vicious attack.
Yes, it may well have been, but would you mind going back?
With just one tiny thing to be done.
Britain was a great country then, isn't it?
People were polite.
Polite. Yeah.
I've heard your opinion of Millwall Football Club, but I don't agree with it. As I'm a Brentford supporter, so I'm going to come over there in a second and give you all, or either one of you, a damn good thrashing.
And finally in this round, Ian, your predictable foursome are Michael Jackson, Florence Nightingale, Bob Dole, and Gail Tilsley off of Coronation Street.
Good.
Oh, it's just so obvious, Ian. So,
Well,
Go ahead.
is this people who have problems shaking hands?
That old medical complaint.
It was just Bob Dole during the election. He couldn't shake people's hands, and there was a problem because people, he'd got a war wound. They didn't like shaking people's hands, which isn't very good for a politician. Jackson, I was going to say he doesn't like shaking hands, but he's in with a shake there, isn't he? Florence Nightingale, you couldn't shake hands with her because she had a lamp. And it would pour whole of the Crimea up in flames.
Unless she was holding it in her left hand, of course.
Damn. They're all nurses. Bob Dole's married to a nurse, she's a nurse.
the lady with the lamp, it is...
He's getting married to a nurse who's had his child.
And Gail Tilsley
Is a nurse
Ain't a nurse.
on Coronation Street.
Was a nurse.
is the wrong answer.
I had a clue.
Yeah, I'm more than aware of that.
We've established that twice now.
The answer is that they've all married nurses except Florence Nightingale, who was a nurse and didn't marry anyone. Gail Tilsley from Coronation Street married Martin Platt, who is a male nurse. In the past few years, men have moved into several traditionally female-dominated occupations, such as secretary, receptionist, children's nanny, and prime minister. Bob Dole was just a young man when he married a nurse during the war, but they soon split up over political differences. Apparently, she supported the Confederates. It's been revealed that Michael Jackson's nurse was impregnated by artificial insemination. It's not quite clear how Jacko motivated himself to fill a test tube, although the strains of Beat It were heard coming from the cubicle. All of which cases of intensive care bring us alarmingly close to the end, and the situation is that Paul and Austin share an acrimonious 7, whilst Ian and Jack are in perfect harmony with 11.
Wow.
And so to our almost popular missing words round, a selection of blanked expressions intermingled or even not with headlines from this week's guest publication, the endlessly entertaining Fireside, the official magazine of the Solid Fuel Association. So let's literally start with what helps you breathe more easily?
Channel tunnel.
Lungs help you.
That's right.
It is accurate, but not the right answer.
Esophagus.
Coal.
Coal.
In fact, the right answer. According to Fireside, a coal fire helps in the battle against allergies. You simply put everything you're allergic to on top of it. Next, Scott goes on what?
Top of the pops.
Piss.
Not.
He goes on the wagon, he's pretending to have given it up.
Is exactly
No,
the
he's
right
pretending
answer.
He has given it up.
Yes, obviously. Sir Nicholas Scott, who's announced that he's going to become absolutely teetotal, although he was talking to a lamppost at the time. Next, what? Not known to Blair.
Austin Mitchell.
Labour of God.
Payments to his office.
Yes, is the right answer. Donors' names is in fact how it puts it, but Tony Blair apparently unaware of where the donations for his office fund are coming from. But it is only £500,000, so it's understandable. Next, what is not ideal, says Bishop?
Sex with choir boys.
Homosexual marriage.
Is the
not
right
ideal.
answer, very good. And finally, what hits Ashdown?
Realisation that whole career has been pointless.
Alan Starkey.
Oddly not Alan Starkey. No, it is in fact Plastic Cups Row. Mr. Ashdown, accused of making improper advances to... You were so close. Just about to say Plastic Cups Row. Accused of making improper advances to plastic cup manufacturers. No stopping him, is there? Which tragic catalogue of missed opportunities as it brings us sobbing to the end of our very last round. And the sad truth is that this week's Eurostars are Paul and Austin with 8, while this week's Superstars are Ian and Jack with 15. So hats off to our winners, piss off to our losers. Parting is such sweet sorrow, but infinitely preferable to our caption competition, which we must first get out of the way. Paul and Austin, this was yours.
The man in the middle is saying, "Where's the dipstick?" And the other bloke's saying he's standing behind you. Or John, the bloke is whispering to John Major. He says, "Now, the bloke on our left, don't say anything, but he's got a very small man's head growing out of his back."
Thank you, Ian and Jack. What do you think of for this?
Bizarre casting blamed for True Blue film flop.
She's shouting out to the riverbank, "Straw and swans, get your straw and swans here." It's the old straw and swan man, mummy. Stop me and throttle one.
Are they all saying, why doesn't that bastard believe us? We can swim.
Thank you. And I leave you with news that in Kabul there's evidence of another arms deal scandal as weapons arrive without the proper instructions. There's disaster at the latest meeting of the European Summit as Mrs. Cole forgets to pack the sandwiches. And in London, John Major G's himself up before a big speech on drug abuse. Good night.